Thanksgiving had always been a complicated day for me. For most families, it meant warmth, togetherness, and laughter around a crowded table. For me, it meant walking into a house where I never truly belonged. Still, year after year, I showed up. Some part of me always hoped this time would be different, that maybe my parents would finally look at me the way they looked at my sister. I had spent hours preparing. I baked a pie using my grandmother's recipe, the same one she taught me when I was little, the one she used to say carried love in every bite. I wrapped it carefully, placed it in a tin, and held it like treasure as I walked up the front steps of my parents' house. The November air bit at my cheeks, and my breath rose in little clouds, but my heart was heavier than the cold. Through the window, I could already hear the clinking of glasses, the roar of laughter, and the sound of plates being passed around. My sister's voice rang the loudest, clear and confident, just like always. Her car was parked neatly in the driveway, polished to perfection, while mine sat on the street like an outsider. I straightened my scarf, pressed the pie closer to my chest, and told myself, this year will be different. I rang the bell. My heart pounded with nervous hope. The door swung open, and there was my mother, dressed in pearls and her holiday best, her smile nowhere to be found. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, sharp and judgmental. Behind her, I saw the warm glow of the dining room, the golden turkey at the center of the table, and everyone raising their glasses. For one small second, I thought she'd step aside and let me in. But then her lips parted, and her voice, cold as the November wind, cut through me. "You're not invited." I froze. The words didn't make sense. What? What do you mean I'm not invited? It's Thanksgiving. I'm your daughter. My father appeared behind her, tall, arms crossed, his jaw set like stone. He didn't soften her words. He didn't even blink. Instead, he added his own. This dinner is for family. Real family. The pie in my hands suddenly felt like lead. My stomach twisted. "Dad, please. It's just one dinner. I brought pie. I thought—" Her eyes narrowed. She gave a quick shake of her head, dismissive, almost disgusted. "Go home." And before I could say another word, the door closed. The sound echoed like thunder, louder than any slammed door I had ever heard. It wasn't just a door shutting, it was years of rejection condensed into a single, sharp sound. I stood on the porch in silence, gripping the pie so hard my knuckles turned white. My breath fogged in the cold, blurring the glowing windows that framed the life I wasn't allowed to join. Inside, laughter rose again, muffled but piercing, each note reminding me of my place. Outside, unwanted, erased. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not this time. Not here. For a long moment, I didn't move. The wind whipped against my coat, the pie tin chilled against my fingers, but my feet felt nailed to the porch. I wanted to scream, to pound on the door until they opened it, to demand that they see me. But no sound came out. My voice was trapped behind a lifetime of being silenced. Instead, something else stirred inside me. The pain didn't disappear. It hardened. It sharpened into something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. They thought they had erased me from their family table. They thought they could humiliate me into silence. But they were wrong. Because what none of them knew was that in just 20 minutes, I would walk back through that same door. And when I did, it wouldn't be as the forgotten daughter they could ignore. It would be as the one holding the truth. That would change everything. I walked back to my car, each step heavier than the last. The pies still sat in my hands, untouched, its warmth fading just like the hope I'd carried with me up those steps. When I slid into the driver's seat, I placed it gently on the passenger side, as if it were something fragile, then gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned pale. My breath came out shaky, uneven. For a moment, I thought about driving away, just disappearing into the night like they wanted me to. But the humiliation was too raw, too deep. Their words kept echoing in my mind. This dinner is for family, real family. What did that make me then? What was I? I sat there in the dark, and memories began to surface, like old wounds refusing to stay buried. I remembered birthdays where my sister's gifts were extravagant, wrapped in shiny paper with bows, while mine were practical, almost obligatory: socks, a notebook, a sweater that was 2 sizes too big. I remembered blowing out candles alone, their claps half-hearted, their eyes already on her. I remembered my high school graduation. I was the valedictorian, the one chosen to speak, to represent the entire class. I looked into the crowd, searching for my parents' faces, but halfway through my speech, they slipped out the back door because my sister had a sports banquet to attend. They never even heard me finish. I remembered bringing home my college acceptance letter. I had worked for months on applications, pouring my heart into essays, praying for a chance. When I told my father the news, his only response was, "Your sister already got into a better school." He didn't even look at me. Even small moments came back, ones I thought I had forgotten. Sitting at the dinner table while conversations swirled around me as if my voice didn't matter. Walking into family gatherings and realizing no one had saved me a seat. The way relatives always asked about my sister, her job, her love life, her accomplishments, while I sat there, invisible. I had learned to shrink myself, to fold in my shoulders and speak softer so I wouldn't be scolded for interrupting. I had learned to accept that I was the shadow, the background character in my own family's story. But tonight wasn't just another memory to bury. It was a breaking point. As I sat in the car, anger bubbled beneath the hurt, rising like fire. They thought I would leave quietly, pie in hand, tears down my cheeks. They thought I would swallow the humiliation just like I had 100 times before. But they didn't know me anymore. Life outside their house had changed me. I had fought for everything I had: my career, my independence, my survival. I had learned to build a life without their approval, a life where I mattered, even if they refused to see it. And most importantly, I wasn't empty-handed tonight. I hadn't come only for turkey and pie. Tucked inside the tin, hidden beneath the foil, was something far more powerful than food. An envelope. It had been given to me years ago by the only person in my family who had ever truly seen me, my grandmother. Before she passed, she had pulled me aside, pressed it into my hands, and whispered, "This is for you, for when the time is right." For years, I had kept it locked away, unsure of when or if I'd ever need it. But now, sitting in my car with the echo of that slammed door still ringing in my ears, I knew the time had come. The anger in my chest settled into something else: resolve. I straightened in my seat, wiped the corner of my eye, and placed my hand over the pie tin. They thought I had erased me, but they had no idea. Because in 20 minutes, I wouldn't just be the daughter they turned away. I would be the truth they could no longer ignore. The pie sat quietly on the seat next to me, its sugary scent filling the car. But hidden beneath its foil covering, tucked carefully inside the tin, was something far sweeter and infinitely more powerful than dessert: the envelope. I lifted it gently, running my fingers over its edges. My grandmother's handwriting, faded and uneven from her illness, still marked the front: "For my granddaughter, to be opened when the time is right." For years I had wondered what she meant, At first, I thought it was just her way of comforting me in her final days, a keepsake to remember her by. But the weight of the envelope had always told me there was more. When I finally opened it after her funeral, my hands had trembled so much I nearly tore the paper. Inside, I found not just words of love, but documents that stunned me. Legal, notarized, undeniable. My grandmother had left me the family's most treasured place, the cabin. It wasn't just a house, it was our family's heart. Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas mornings, summer afternoons fishing by the lake, it had all happened there. It was where traditions were born, where photographs were taken, where stories were passed down. To everyone else, the cabin was a symbol of family unity. To me, it was the only place I had ever felt whole. And now, according to her will, it was mine, entirely mine. I remembered the night I first read her letter. She had written, "I know you've often felt unseen. I know how much it hurt to sit at the table and be treated as though you weren't enough. But I saw you. I always saw you. And I want you to have something that proves, once and for all, that you belong." I had cried until I couldn't breathe, clutching the papers to my chest. At the time, I thought it was too much, too heavy a burden to carry alone. So I kept it quiet, hidden away. But tonight, after being told to my face that I wasn't real family, those words rang louder than ever. My grandmother's voice was there in my mind, steady and loving, pushing me forward. Use it when the time is right. And I knew this was the moment. I glanced back at the house, glowing and warm like a postcard, hiding the cruelty that had just unfolded at its door. My sister's laugh carried faintly into the night, high-pitched and victorious, as though she had won something by my absence. My parents were inside, proud and comfortable, secure in their belief that they had erased me. But they had no idea what I held in my hands. The anger inside me shifted into something sharper, something clearer. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about truth, about finally being seen. I laid the envelope gently back into the pie tin, hiding it under the foil again. It looked harmless from the outside, like nothing more than dessert for the table. But to me, it was a weapon of truth, sharpened by years of neglect and sealed with my grandmother's love. My reflection in the car window looked different now. No longer the rejected daughter, no longer the girl who begged for scraps of affection. There was a steadiness in my eyes, a quiet determination. I whispered into the silence, "They think they've shut me out, but in 20 minutes, they'll regret every word." I picked up the pie, tucked the envelope safely inside, and stepped back out into the night. My hands no longer trembled. My heart no longer wavered. Because I wasn't just carrying dessert. I was carrying the truth. And the truth has a way of shattering even the strongest walls of denial. I waited in the car with the engine off, counting breaths instead of seconds. Through the front window, I could see the table settling into its rhythm, glasses refreshed, jokes recycled, my sister's laugh cutting through the noise like a bell people are trained to answer. I watched the minute hand climb. 15, 16, 17. At 19, I lifted the pie, slid the envelope safely beneath the foil, and opened the door. Cold air rushed my face as I crossed the lawn. The porch light threw a hard circle around the welcome mat. I didn't ring, I pushed. The latch gave, warmth hit me in a wave. Sage, butter, champagne. Conversations stalled mid-sentence. Forks paused. A dozen eyes landed on me as if I had brought winter in with my coat. My mother stood so fast her chair scraped the wood. "We already told you." "This will take 3 minutes," I said, steady and louder than I felt. "Then I'll leave." My father folded his arms, the uniform of judgment. "You don't make the rules in this house." "I know," I said. "That's why I brought my own." I set the pie on the sideboard with a quiet click and placed the envelope beside it. My sister leaned back like a queen on a throne she believed could not be toppled. "Is this a performance?" she asked, smiling at the cousins as if we shared a private joke. "It's a reading," I answered, "and it concerns Grandma." The room shifted at her name. Even people who had been pretending not to look straightened. The cabin existed in that syllable, the smell of pine, the splintered dock, hot chocolate that burned your tongue if you were greedy. My mother's mouth thinned. "Not here, not now." "Exactly here," I said, sliding the flap open, "and exactly now." I took out the plastic sleeves, one with the letter in wavering blue ink, one with a stamped deed, whose official seal caught the chandelier light. Paper can look fragile until you hold it like a blade. I did. "You're embarrassing yourself," my mother hissed. "I've been embarrassed for years. I'm finished with that part." Uncle Ron cleared his throat from halfway down the table, the only person in the room who read contracts for a living instead of pretending to understand them. I passed him the deed without ceremony. He reached for his glasses, studied the top page, flipped to the notarization, then to the county filing notice. His brows climbed a fraction. He did not speak, and in not speaking, said plenty. "Sit down," my father ordered, like I was still 12 and late for chores. "I'll stand," I replied. "It's harder to erase people when they're standing." My sister laughed brittle. "What is this really about? Attention?" "It's about belonging," I said, and laid the letter on the table where the candlelight could find it. "Grandma wrote this to me. You can listen or you can leave the room, but either way, I am going to read it." Silence spread like ink in water. Even the baby at the end of the table quieted, sensing the change in pressure. I could hear the wall clock ticking, not delicate, not grand, just ordinary time insisting we were in it. I looked at my mother. "You shut a door in my face 20 minutes ago. I won't return the favor. You're welcome to hear what she left for me." Her jaw worked. "You always take things out of context." But she said the sentence, thin, like a coat in the wrong season. I reached into my tote and set down one more object, the small brass key, smooth from decades of pockets and palms. Grandma had pressed it into my hand on my 21st birthday, with a wink and no instructions. I placed it between the salt and pepper, as if it were simply another thing we pass to one another at this table, like kindness, like bread. My father's eyes flicked to it, then to the letter. "This is melodrama. This is documentation. There's a difference." Uncle Ron exhaled, a sound like the first crack of ice at thaw. It's legitimate," he said, still reading. My sister's smile faltered. "Legitimate how?" "You'll have time to study it, but right now you're going to hear her voice." I slipped the letter from its sleeve. The paper trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what it carried. My grandmother's handwriting wavered, and then steadied, just like her. Just like me. I didn't look at anyone as I began. I looked at the words. "To my granddaughter," I read, the room holding its breath. "I have watched you be small to make room for people who never learned how to share. I have watched you sit at our table like a guest in your own home. This is not an apology for what others failed to give you. It is a key to something that already knew your name." A glass clinked somewhere, accidental and loud. I kept going. "I am leaving the family cabin to you, not because I love you more, but because you loved it right. You tended it. You listened when the floorboards spoke. You mended what was torn and did not brag. Let it be your shelter and your boundary. Use it when a door closes that should have opened." My mother flinched like the words had touched her skin. My father stared at the table as if the grain of the wood might offer another version of the truth. My sister's eyes shone, not with tears, but with something sharper that had nothing to do with love.
I lowered the page a fraction, letting the sentence hang. "There's more," I said, voice steady, "but you should know the heart of it now." Someone at the far end whispered, "She left it to her?" I put the letter down flat, palm covering the signature like a seal. "Yes," I said, "she did." The house seemed to tilt, just slightly, as if a weight had shifted from one side to the other. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips, but my feet were quiet in my shoes. For once, I was not bracing. I was rooted. "Continue," Uncle Ron said softly. I lifted the page again, and the room leaned in, as if drawn by tide. Outside, the wind pressed a palm against the window and then let go. Inside, every story we'd ever told about who counted and who didn't waited for the next line. I took a breath that felt like the first honest one in years, and began to read.
The words of my grandmother's letter seemed to echo in the air long after I stopped reading. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. It was as if time itself had frozen at the table. The crackle of candles, the faint ticking of the hallway clock, even the rustle of someone's sleeve, all of it faded into silence that pressed heavy on every person in the room. I looked up from the page. My mother's face was pale, her perfectly painted lips parted but without words. She clutched the edge of the tablecloth, twisting it so tightly her knuckles turned white. My father leaned back in his chair, arms still crossed, but his jaw was clenched, his eyes darting toward the letter, as if the paper itself were a threat he couldn't fight. My sister's smirk, so practiced, so confident, had crumbled. She sat stiff, her eyes flashing with panic, her fork abandoned on the plate. This isn't right," my mother finally whispered, her voice trembling. "She didn't mean this. She couldn't have." But the truth was there in ink, notarized and sealed. Grandma's words, her choice, her love, all undeniable. "She knew exactly what she was doing," I said, my voice firm. "She saw me, even when you refused to see me. And now everyone else can see too." My father slammed a hand against the table, the sound making several relatives jump. "This is absurd. That cabin belongs to this family. We built our lives around it." "Correction," I said, evenly. "You built your lives around it. Grandma left it to me because she knew I would honor it, because she knew I belonged there, even when you pretended I didn't belong anywhere." Murmurs spread down the table. My aunt leaned toward my uncle, whispering, "It's real. I saw the seal." My cousins avoided eye contact, staring at their plates, unwilling to side with my parents, but too afraid to speak aloud. My sister finally found her voice, shrill and desperate. "You don't deserve it. You've always been the failure, the outsider. Grandma must have been confused, sick when she signed those papers." "She wasn't sick," I shot back. "The documents were signed long before her illness. She was clear, she was deliberate, and she chose me." The weight of those last three words, "she chose me," hung in the air like thunder. For years, I had lived in their shadows, invisible, unworthy, humiliated. Tonight, for the first time, the power shifted. Their cruelty had been laid bare, exposed not by my anger, but by the truth in my hands. "You think this is about money, property?" I said, looking directly at my parents. "It's not. It's about love, about recognition, about the fact that I mattered to someone in this family. And now, whether you like it or not, everyone knows it." The room was still. No one laughed. No one dared to move. The very people who had excluded me 20 minutes earlier now sat in stunned silence, their power crumbling, their pride shattered. It was ironic, really. They had tried to erase me by locking me out, but by doing so, they had created the perfect stage for the truth to be revealed. Public, undeniable, humiliating, not for me, but for them. I gathered the letter and slid it back into the envelope, my hands steady now, my heart no longer trembling. For the first time in my life, I stood taller than my mother's disapproval, taller than my father's judgment, taller than my sister's smugness. This cabin is mine.
And no matter what you do, you can't change that. Grandma saw me, and now everyone else does too. The silence that followed wasn't just shock, it was defeat.
The room stayed frozen long after I slid the letter back into the envelope. It was almost surreal watching the very people who had dismissed me moments earlier sit in silence, their power shattered in front of everyone. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one shrinking under their judgment. They were. I tucked the envelope into my tote, picked up the pie, and stood tall. My voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire dining room. "You shut me out," I said softly, "but you can't shut out the truth. And tonight, the truth is louder than any of you." No one spoke. My mother's hands trembled in her lap, my father's jaw worked, but no words came out. My sister's eyes were glassy, not with guilt, but with anger, as if her perfect world had cracked and she couldn't tape it back together. I turned toward the door, every step measured. The same floor that once felt like it could swallow me now carried me like a stage. My heels clicked with confidence, each sound reminding them of the dignity they couldn't take from me. When I stepped outside, the November air hit my face, sharp and cold, but it no longer felt cruel. Behind me, the murmur of voices began, low, uneasy, broken. They would argue, they would deny, they would blame each other, but none of it mattered anymore, because I wasn't part of their silence. I had my own voice. I walked to the car, placed the pie carefully on the passenger seat, and rested the envelope beside it. My reflection in the car window looked different now, stronger, calmer, free. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the one who had changed the story. The drive to the cabin felt like crossing into another life. The city lights faded, the roads grew darker, and soon only the moon and the stars lit my way. My hands didn't tremble on the wheel. My heart didn't ache with longing. All I felt was peace, a quiet certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. When I reached the cabin, the sight of it nearly brought me to my knees. The porch, the crooked shutters, the chimney standing tall against the night sky, it was all exactly as I remembered, but different now. It was mine. I unlocked the door with the brass key Grandma had given me years ago, the same key I had lain on the table like a quiet declaration. The lock clicked open easily, as if the cabin had been waiting for me all along. Inside, the air smelled of pine and old wood. Dust floated in the glow of my flashlight, but instead of emptiness, I felt warmth. I set the pie on the counter, lit a fire in the hearth, and watched as the flames slowly grew, casting golden light across the room. I sat on the couch, pulled the envelope from my bag, and read Grandma's words again. This time, I didn't cry. I smiled, because I finally understood what she had meant. This wasn't just about property. It wasn't about revenge. It was about belonging. It was about finally having a place where I didn't have to beg for love or fight to be seen. The cabin wasn't just mine on paper. It was mine in spirit, in truth, in every way that mattered. As I ate the first slice of pie, tears welled in my eyes, not from sadness, but from release. For so long, I had carried the weight of being invisible, of being unwanted. Tonight, that weight was gone. They had tried to humiliate me. Instead, they had humiliated themselves. They had tried to shut me out. Instead, they had given me the perfect moment to reveal the truth. And the best part? I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to beg. I didn't need to prove myself with anger. I proved myself with truth, with dignity, with a letter that spoke louder than their lies ever could. I leaned back, watching the fire crackle, and whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, Grandma. You saw me. You always saw me." The cabin didn't answer, but I felt her presence in every creak of the floor, every spark of the fire, every memory etched into the walls. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. That night, I slept under Grandma's old quilt, the same one she used to wrap around me when I was little. For the first time in years, I felt safe. I felt chosen.
And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized something powerful. Revenge hadn't been the goal. Justice had. And justice had finally been served. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't in shouting or fighting, it's in standing tall, speaking the truth, and letting the truth do the work for you. They shut me out for Thanksgiving, but I had something greater than their table, greater than their approval. I had my own place, my own key, my own future. The tables had turned, and this time, I was the one holding the seat of honor.